Hello, everyone. I'm Joan Devine, Director of Education for Pioneer Network, and I'm so pleased to have you with us for another webinar in our Sharing the Vision series. The webinars in this series are approximately 45 minutes long with additional time for Q&A if needed. Our goal is to present topics and start conversations that will inform and inspire as we work together in pioneering a new culture of aging. During today's webinar, there will be a few poll questions, and we encourage you to participate in these. You're also welcome to ask questions using the Q&A. There's a chat box. These will be answered either during the webinar or at the end as time permits. And so let's begin. For many of us who have been inspired over the years by the work of Naomi Feil, Pioneer Network is so pleased to have with us today Naomi's daughter and the Executive Director of the Validation Training Institute, Vicki de Klerk. Vicki is joining us all the way from the Netherlands, hence the adjustment from our usual webinar time. So Vicki, welcome, and we're ready to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be joining you today. Can you turn to the first PowerPoint, please, or my first PowerPoint? That's my mom, and she's the one who got me into this business, so to speak. My mom started developing validation back in the 1970s. She was and still alive at 87 and still doing workshops. She went back to the nursing home where she grew up and started practicing as a social worker. She was especially gifted at group work. And so she did a lot of what turned into the beginnings of validation groups. And she would try things out, a technique here, a new idea there. This was the 70s, so she went off to California and studied with Bandler and Grinder and brought elements of neuro-linguistic programming into the method. She would try things out. If they worked, they stayed in. If they didn't work, out. She studied karate, and certain elements of finding your center came also into the tool bag of validation practitioners. Over the years, it developed from her practice, and she first published in 1982. Maybe you can go to the next slide, Joan. That on the right is the Montefiore home where Naomi grew up, actually as a 4 or 5-year-old refugee from Germany. That was in 1937, I believe. And that was the Montefiore home back then, where she and her family grew up in 5 rooms across from the older adults. And I think it was that very early experience with older adults, living with them, that gave her special insight and allowed her to develop validation. In the late 80s, I got pulled into it because she said, can you please help me re-edit my book? And I said, sure. So I started working on it and reading all the citations. And then I went to a nursing home because they heard I was the daughter of Naomi File. And they said, can you give us a little talk about it? I said, sure, I've rewritten the book. I know all the theory. I'm very smart. So I did a little speech, and at the end, there was a nurse sitting in the front row who was clearly very experienced. And she looked at me and she said, that's all very nice, but what do you do when Mrs. Smith spits at you? And I ran back to the book because I had no practical experience. So at that time, I did 2 things. One, I volunteered in a nursing home, I worked there for 4 years. And I went back to school and I became an RN. And that gave me a lot of support for the work that I do, which is teach validation these days. I guess it was 2014 when I took over the reins from my mom. She had had enough of this executive director stuff, and I am now the executive director of Validation Training Institute, and we have 23 training centers around the world: China, Japan, Israel, across Europe, and the United States. And we also have over 430 certified validation teachers who teach our certification courses everywhere. I believe we have a poll that I jumped over, but maybe, Joan, we can do it now. I would love to know if anybody here has experience with validation. So if you would.
Looks like we're getting responses.
Oh, wonderful.
We'll give it just another couple seconds and then I'll show you the results.
Thank you.
I think we've slowed down, so whoops. I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. There you go.
Okay, wonderful. I am so happy to be introducing this concept to the 61% who haven't had experience with validation. Next slide, please. Great. A lot of people think that validation has not been sufficiently researched, but actually there are over 60 research papers. The first one, Naomi File did in 1972, and actually I think what we list here for 2018 is the last one I saw, but I understand that there are ever more research papers being done all over the world on the validation method. So I really think it's one of the most evidence-based, non-pharmacological, I think that's the word, methods that is specifically to help communication between somebody living with cognitive decline and their caregivers, whether they're professional or families, or communities, or police, or ambulance workers, or firefighters, or the butcher down the street. Anybody can use these, the basic attitude and the techniques. Next slide, please. Yeah, that one. What is validation? That's it in a nutshell. A lot of people think that validation is just being empathetic. You believe in what the other person says is true. And while empathy is certainly part of the basic attitude, another part is honesty and integrity. And that means I am honest with you. I am honest with a person living with cognitive decline, and I maintain my integrity. So I never play act, I never lie. I'm always there and open with respect. And the other aspect in that basic attitude that I missed is being non-judgmental, allowing people their own realities. So that's the basic attitude. On the theory side, we've got the principles which sort of guide our actions and give us our goals. And I'm going to give you a couple of the principles during this talk. It's also a very unique way of looking at aging and what a lot of people call dementia. Dementia, of course, is a word that it has very negative connotations, and in the new diagnostic manual, the DSM-5, they're trying to move away from that, and they're calling it, I believe, cognitive decline, which I think is or accurate, actually. On the other side, the techniques, you've got a bunch of prerequisites, and I'm going to teach you a few of those in this talk. And then there are verbal techniques, meaning we use them with people who are verbal, and nonverbal techniques, we use them with people who are expressing their needs and feelings in a nonverbal way, either through movement or sounds. It is this combination of elements that makes validation a unique method. Because if you use the techniques without the basic attitude, it falls flat. If you use the right technique with the right attitude, but for the wrong reason, it's also likely to get not a positive response. So it's this integration of the three that really makes it unique, and it takes time to learn. Next slide, please. I have a poll here, I believe, Joan. You want to bring it up?
I sure will. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you're seeing the poll now.
I see the poll.
Okay. This one took a little thought.
It's okay. Which response is best to say to an older, disoriented woman who says, "You stole my money"? Is it, "Your money is gone"? Is it, "No, I didn't"? Or, "Oh, I'll look for it"? And while people are filling it in, I'm going to tell a story about my stepfather, actually, who has what they diagnosed as late onset Alzheimer's disease, which we would call time confusion in the validation world. He was staying with me for a while, and he was staying in our guest bedroom, and I went up one morning and I said, "Knock, knock, knock. Hey, good morning." And he turns to me and he says, "Have we arrived yet?" And I thought, where do you need to be? And he said, "Well, we were landing." And then I recognized he had flown back in time to when he was a soldier on the troop ship coming over to France, actually, after D-Day. And he was something about being in that room reminded him of that experience, which I found very interesting. This validation principle told me, actually guided my actions in that moment. You accept them as they are. You don't try to change them. If he thinks he's on, okay. Thank you for the results of the poll. I am so happy that nobody answered the middle one. Yay! The "I'll look for it" is certainly accepting, but it's trying to fix a problem that may not be there. The problem may not be the money. Saying "your money is gone," I don't see the poll. Not everybody is seeing the poll, Joan.
And it should be on, so it may be your particular computer that for some reason is not supporting that function.
Okay. I'll go on if that's okay.
Absolutely.
For those who cannot see the poll, 44% said "your money is gone," and 56% said "I'll look for it." I would choose "your money is gone," like that, which sort of mirrors the emotion of what the person was saying, and not acknowledging, yes, it is gone, and not correcting and saying, no, it isn't gone. Do you know what I mean? I hope so. The validation way is in between those two other ways. Reality, or it could be diversion, it could be lying, it could be pretending on the other side. Okay, we can get rid of the poll, thanks. I hope that this principle is clear to you. We often think that we accept people, but then the challenging moments come when somebody is expressing a lot of emotion directly at you. Then it takes a breath to accept what the other person is saying. Next slide, please. All right, listening with empathy. There was a lady I used to work with in the nursing home, and I knew from her history that she had been in a concentration camp, but she never talked about it. And I started validating her, short little moments, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. And within a few weeks, she began to open up. And I just listened. I mean, there's not much you can say. You can't take the experience away. But giving her the space and the time to cry opened up a well in her. And she was able to get it out. Now, it took a very long time for her to reduce the amount of time that she was crying with me. I mean, it can take a long... Think of in your own life a situation that was so painful. And when you told finally somebody whom you trusted, who really listened to you and got it off your chest, so to speak, there's a feeling of, if you know what I mean, once it's out. Sometimes I call an emotional wound similar to a physical wound, if you can think of it in that way, for those of you who are in the nursing or caregiving profession. You always clean a wound, and then you put a dressing on it to protect it, and then you clean it and cover it, and you continue that process until the skin has grown back, or there's some kind of protection of the wound. And the same is true of an emotional wound. The cleaning process is the telling of it to somebody who's really listening. And that may need to happen a lot. And then finally, it starts to heal. Okay, let's go on to the next one. There is a reason behind the behavior of very old, male-oriented, and disoriented people. This is a key principle of validation. That's what we're looking for. What is underneath? There was a lady, Mrs. Weber, and she used to walk around the nursing home that I worked in. And I know nursing home is the wrong word. Please excuse me for using old language. She was a very large woman, and she would walk, and she would collect things and put them in her dress. Spoons, napkins, anything that would fit in the pockets. And it seemed like very bizarre behavior until you realize that during World War II, she was living in a city that was totally bombed flat. She was a young mother. She had 2 little children. Her husband was in the resistance. She was alone, and suddenly you realize this woman's behavior makes tremendous sense. She's trying to care for her children. She's trying to be a good mother. And if we can meet people there, in the emotion, in the need that they're expressing, then we can make contact, we can build a relationship, and people can, be accompanied in their needs, in the expression of their needs. I hope that's clear. Next slide, please. So, next, there we go. What we can do, what you can do, is to enter into their world. And the first thing you need to do is to observe what is going on there. And so we train in validation training our skills in observation, but I mean exquisite observation. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell, perhaps? What do you feel? All of that is critically important. Then what we do is we calibrate. And by calibrate, I mean we shift ourselves. We change our face, our breathing, the way we're holding our body to sort of match what we see in the other person. And by doing that, I can easily slip into having empathy. I know what that other person is feeling because I feel it too. Next slide, please. So we come to the very first exercise. I hope you will join me in doing this exercise. I will lead it. Oh, we have a poll question. Joan, you want to pull it up?
There you go.
Thank you. And as you're answering this poll question, think of a color that makes you feel strong and vibrant and full of resourcefulness, like you can handle anything. And imagine that color. As you imagine the color, breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And if you're finished with the poll, put your hands relaxed wherever you feel most comfortable and your feet on the ground. Don't cross your legs. Really connect with the ground. And if you feel like it, close your eyes. If not, don't. Imagine that the air around your head is colored with this energy-giving, vibrant color, your color. And every time you breathe in through your nose, you breathe the color into your body. And every time you exhale, the color fills the inside of your body. So breathe in and fill your entire chest with color. And breathe in. Send that color down into your hips. With the next breath, send the color down into your legs, your knees, ankles, feet, toes. Take another breath. Make sure everything's totally filled, including your tiny toe. Now come back up to your shoulders. On the next breath, fill your arms with color. Elbows, wrists, hands, fingertips. And with the last breath in, fill your head with color. And make it vibrant. You can. You have the resources. And when you're ready, come on back. Okay. So I have the results of the poll, and 45% of you do have a daily practice of centering or meditation. Oh, it says medication instead of meditation. I hope it's not medication for the most of you, but for the 55% of you that don't do centering or any kind of practice to help you feel grounded and in the moment. If you like the exercise that we just did, please take it. On the VTI website, and I'll give you the web address in a few moments, there are 3 different centering exercises that you can use depending on whether you like a visual exercise or a sound, or perhaps you prefer something kinesthetic. I see that the website is already just put up. It will be on our YouTube channel as well. I hope that was a useful exercise for you. If it wasn't good for you, no worries. Maybe you need something else. And what is critically important for every person who works in this difficult field is to find a way to restore yourself, to heal yourself in those, 30 seconds, 1 minute, when you have time, just to take that breath and then do what you have to do. Next slide, please. Observe. So what do you see in that picture? You can say something about the little girl's mouth turning down. You can say perhaps that the nose is a little bit pinched. There is direct eye contact between the two of them. And now I want to do a little exercise with all of you. And that is, I want you to observe my face and see the difference when I express different emotions. And try to maybe use the chat box, if you like, to describe what you see in objective terms. Don't try to guess the emotion. Try to observe what happens to these muscles these muscles here at the corners of the eyes, what's happening with the eyebrows. The cheeks can tell you an awful lot. Okay. Could you see it? Yeah, nice. Furrowed brow. Okay, angry, pinched mouth, furrowed brow, holding of breath. Nice observation. Fantastic. Yeah, my head was low. Was my chin out or in? Chin's a little bit out. Right. When somebody's looking like this, and then you try to look like that a little bit, you don't have to do it exactly. This is not mimicking. This is just, we can do the eyes maybe a little, maybe the mouth a little bit. And when you do that, your voice changes as well. And then you can say something like, you look really angry. Or are you angry? And when you look at somebody who's reflecting the same emotion, you feel, hey, that person understands me. Let me do another one. And let's see, you guys are great. Let's practice one more. Okay, try to describe what you see. The mouth, is it tense or is it, yeah, there we go. The lips are turned down. Good. What's happening here around the eyes? This is going down, this is a little bit up, right? Slight furrow, good observation. Can you see that this is a little hangy? With old people, it's easier because things hang more. And you can see changes more. He's right, slack jaw, good observation. Nice. That happens when this gets released, whereas with anger, which tenses the cheeks, it pulls it up. You see? So by observing, then you can move more easily into empathy. You can also more easily do our next slide and our next exercise. Find the appropriate distance or closeness. If somebody is doing this, you know that person needs a little bit more energy. They have a lot of energy, they need a little bit more space. I wouldn't come in very close. Somebody who's here, they might need more closeness just to know that you're there. So that fine observation helps us with this next technique or prerequisite, really. I think we have a poll here, don't we, Joan?
We sure do. Just one moment and we'll launch it.
Okay. This is an easy one. Have you been in a social situation where another person got too close? Yeah, right. And your first reaction, of course, is that, taking more space. That person was not respecting your personal space. Most people find a handshake distance apart the most comfortable distance. Granted, some people need less and some people need more. When you're very old, a lot of factors affect this. Your range of vision, for instance. An old person may only have this kind of range of sight and nothing on the side. So in order for a person to know where you are, you have to get in front. Some people are very closed down and in their own world, so to speak, withdrawn. And in order to reach those people, we need to get sometimes closer than we feel comfortable. And then it's a decision. Do I want to communicate with that person? Or do I want to keep my comfort zone? And I can't tell you which is the right choice. It depends on how much you want to communicate with that very withdrawn person. People who are expressing a lot of anger usually need more space. So you want to keep that in mind and not move in too quickly or too close, because you might get hit. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. So, yeah, I think that's all on that. It's important for you to find the distance or nearness that each individual needs. Good. Let's go to the next one. Oh, yes. Voice tone is huge. There are 2 points. I see one person has written, get to their eye level. And if you're tall, or if the person is sitting in a wheelchair, that's exactly right. You have to get on eye level. I haven't covered that yet, but it's an important point. Using an appropriate voice tone. By appropriate, I mean adult to adult. If I were to talk to you in this kind of voice tone and say validation is such a wonderful method and I'm here to tell you all about it and I'm sure you're really interested, you would all think that I was either crazy or you would shut this whole thing off because I'm talking down to you. I'm not talking to you like you're an adult. And very often, and particularly in facilities where older people live, I hear this voice tone and it comes out not because the person is mean or anything like that. It's just an unconscious thing where we talk down to or we get a controlling voice tone sometimes because we've said it 47 times before and we're allowing our frustration to come through in our voice tone. That happens sometimes. We're human, we're allowed. But I would like for you to make conscious choices about how you use your voice and your voice tone, especially when you're working with people who have cognitive decline. And as you look at this slide, there's a second issue, and that is congruence between what you say and your body language, and how important it is that those be congruent. When you look at the picture and the caption, what do you believe the most? Well, the body language, right? Body language is a majority of the message you are sending, and the words that you use or the content is minor. Right, her face says it all. Exactly, exactly right. So in validation, we want to be congruent. We want to always treat older adults with respect and use an adult to adult voice tone. I don't have an exercise we can do using this webinar medium, but I do have a little, maybe you could call it a homework assignment. Please take your phone or some sort of recording device and audio tape just 2 minutes of you talking with an older adult, preferably somebody who has some form of cognitive decline. And just take 2 minutes of a normal conversation. Take that recording home, and once you've relaxed and you're okay, listen to what you recorded. And maybe you'll hear your voice tone in a new way and go, oh my God, I didn't know I sounded like that. Or you might say, that's exactly what I wanted. In either case, you have more information. You can make choices about how you vocally and address older adults. The next slide, please. So in validation, what we do is we explore what the person is expressing in that moment. Not what they did yesterday, not, oh, I see in their dossier that they had a traumatic experience when they were 4. We're not psychotherapists. We just deal with what's there. If they've got something to talk about, wonderful. If they want to talk about the weather, that's also wonderful. We don't dig, but if somebody is expressing a lot of emotion, validation is a great way to do that because we go deep and we go in with empathy. Often, older adults are expressing basic human needs and old traumas from the past, like the stories I told you about. Next slide, please. You simply accompany the person where they are in that moment. It's not magic. It doesn't make anything better. What it does do is it improves your relationship with that person. That other person says, she really listens to me. She knows what I'm feeling. And you have that wonderful feeling of connection, human to human, when you open yourself to it. A lot of people say, I don't have time for that. And the truth is, it does not take that long. It takes 2-3 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes. And you can do that while you're walking with somebody, sitting with somebody. You can integrate it easily into your normal daily activities, whatever those are. The next slide, please. What validation offers you? Well, communication, of course, relationships, perspective, self-reflection. And the thing I think that's most useful to people who are working with older adults every day is this feeling of, I know what to do. If Mrs. de Klerk yells at me today, I'm not panicking. I know what I have to do. And that gives a feeling of competence. That's wonderful. Next slide. Validation has got Well, actually, I should update that slide because we're just changing to 5 levels. These are certification levels: validation worker, group practitioner, validation presenter, and the new one is validation teacher as a separate category, and then the 5th level, validation master. There are 17 masters in the world, all over, and they are the ones that guide the process of developing validation theory and practice according to new research, according to what we find in practice. So validation is a living and breathing method that changes slowly, but changes. The validation that you learn today is not the validation of the 90s, which is a good thing. We all change and develop in the course of our lives. Next slide, please. Here's that website that you can look at to get more information. And the next slide. Thank you very much for listening and participating in the fun stuff.
And this has been wonderful. And I have to say, this is the most interactive group that I've had the privilege of working with on a webinar, I think, in the 3 years I've been doing it. So thank you so much. We do have 2 questions, Vicki. One is, where are the trainings held?
All over the world. And on the website, you will see the courses that are offered by the Validation Training Institute. We do some what they call blended learning. That means that you will watch videos and do homework assignments whenever you have time. Then there are scheduled webinars that you look at, that you participate in. Unlike this kind of webinar, it's interactive, where the information that you've learned gets anchored more deeply. And then there are in-person meetings where you practice techniques, because if you want to learn a different way of responding, that's a behavioral change. That's not something you can learn over a screen. You need to be there. So our online or internet supported worker course has 2 two-day meetings. The one that's going to take place next year, 2020, will be based in Arizona, actually. But our training centers in the United States offer worker courses I don't even know where they are. I would have to look them up on the website. Thank you for that question, by the way.
Well, and I'm going to skip just 1 second because this question is somewhat related to that. Can interdisciplinary teams or long-term, I'm assuming the acronyms I've got here right, long-term nursing facilities do a training as a group?
Yeah, what a good thing. Yeah. That's awesome, because then you become a validation team and you can help support each other, and the knowledge becomes more anchored in your daily practice. It becomes more anchored and integrated into wherever you're working. If it's a memory care unit, you can shift the entire, as Pioneer Network, you change the culture, basically. That's cool. I love, you can also do in-house courses. We can get a teacher to come to you.
And Vicki, there was one last question from Bonnie. Can this technique be used when someone is very frustrated and becoming combative?
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. Absolutely.
Okay.
So if somebody is coming at you and give me an example. Whoever asked that question, can you pop up quickly on the chat and give me an example?
That was Bonnie.
What would that person say?
Let's see, Bonnie, in case Bonnie had to step off. Oh, Bonnie, you're still with us. Oh, resident upset in an elevator.
So are they scared? Are they angry? What would they say? What words come out of that person's mouth? Yeah, why? Okay, somebody proposed, I want to go home. Why don't you let me out of here? My response would be, first, of course, to observe and calibrate, and in a slightly less intense tone, I would say, you need to get out of here. Where do you need to go? And the person might say, I have got to go home. I say, well, what do you have to do there? Well, the kids are going to be coming home and I got to take care of them. The kids are coming home. What happens if no one's there? Did that ever happen before? So I'm exploring, I'm using questions. I'm not saying you can't go home or yes, let's go out. I'm finding out what's behind the behavior. Is that clear? I hope so.
Okay, that was great and wonderful interaction. And thank you, because most everyone was able to stay on, even though we ran a little bit over, but absolutely worth it, I think. Obviously, you all agree. And I just wanted to end the webinar a little bit thanking Vicki. Certainly, this was just phenomenal and so much more to learn. Thanking all of you for coming and joining us. When you sign off, you should be getting a link to a survey. And if for some reason that doesn't pop up, you'll be getting one in the follow-up email that you'll get in about 24 hours, which will have the supporting documentation as well as an MP4 file with the webinar itself on it, so you can share it with others on your team, listen to it again if you missed something. And then I just wanted to share with you that we do have 2 more webinars yet this year. In November, on the 21st, in our Growing Person-Centeredness series, we're really pleased to have Maggie Calkins joining us in a webinar called Creating Daily Pleasures in Outdoor Spaces, Making It Happen in All Seasons. Going outdoors isn't just about perfect weather. And then the last of our Sharing the Vision webinars is going to be this holiday season, The Gift That Keeps Giving, a conversation with Brian LeBlanc. And for those of you who know Brian, he's a phenomenal gentleman who happens to be living with dementia. And then, of course, I do need to mention, we'd love to see you in in Pittsburgh. And our call for proposals is open. And a little bird told me before this webinar that there may be some folks presenting on validation methods. So very exciting that will be coming. So again, I just want to thank Vicki and all of you so much for being a part of this webinar, for connecting with the network, and everyone have a wonderful day. Vicki, thank you so much.
Thanks, Joan.